All right, good morning, everyone. The day is Wednesday, January 18th. The time is 8:55 a.m. We are back on the record. We are going to begin deliberations on Group 5, Kuskokwim Subsistence, Commercial, and Sport Fisheries. There are 8 proposals in this group, and we will begin with proposal number 90. Proposal number 90.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. For the record, my name is Ross Rennick, and I'm the Assistant Area Management Biologist for the Kuskokwim area. And with me, I have Nick Smith, the Kuskokwim Area Management Biologist, John Chythlook, the Kuskokwim Area Sport Fish Manager, and Alita Trainer, the Northern Region Program Manager for the Subsistence Division. Proposal 90, 5 AAC 01280, Subsistence Fishing Permits.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Staff comments, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nick Smith with the department. Proposal 90 would establish a household Kuskokwim River Tier 2 subsistence king salmon fishery for fish greater than 20 inches between June 12th and June 24th during times of king salmon conservation. Currently, salmon may be taken at any time from the Kuskokwim River, except that the commissioner may, by emergency order, close subsistence fishing periods and restrict fishing gear to conserve king salmon. There are no harvest limits or annual possession limits for subsistence king salmon fishing, except in that portion of the Antioch River upstream of the doe stock from June 1st through August 31st, when subsistence fishing with a hook and line attached to a rod or pole. The bag and possession limit for king salmon is 2 fish. The department is neutral on this proposal. If this proposal is adopted, the board would need to provide the department guidance on the % of the annual forecasted surplus of king salmon allocated to the Tier 2 fishery and the criteria that would be used to administer the Tier 2 permit. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Board discussion. Mr. Wood.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll be voting against this particular proposal. In the written submittals and comments in unison were in opposition to it, and most telling to me is RC 20, whereby the Kuskokwim River Intertribal Fish Commission also was in opposition because of the widespread opposition to Tier 2 management in the lower portion of the river. And for that reason, and seeing no justification to go to a Tier 2, I will be a no vote.
Ms. Mitchell.
Thank you. I too will be in opposition to this proposal. I think there's complications on who's eligible for the permit. There was no public testimony or public comments in support of this. We have 4 in opposition, 3 of which were ACs, including the Bethel AC. And I think it could cause complications during times when there's federal special actions taken. I'll be in opposition.
Mr. Jensen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll go through the subsistence regulation review. Is this stock in a non-subsistence area? No. Is the stock customarily and traditionally taken or used for subsistence? Yes. The board made a positive customary and traditional use finding for halibut, Pacific cod, and all other finfish in the Kuskokwim area, and specific findings for king, chum, sockeye koa, and pink salmon in the Kuskokwim River drainage. Can a portion of this stock be harvested consistent with sustained yield? Yes. What is the amount reasonably necessary for subsistence? The board revised the amount reasonably necessary, finding the Kuskokwim River king salmon in July 2013 to be 67,200 to 109,800 king salmon. Do the regulations provide for a reasonable opportunity for subsistence use? It does provide some opportunity, as they stated in their in RC2. The department's run down on this, so every year they've been providing some opportunity. Is it necessary to reduce or eliminate other uses to provide reasonable opportunity for subsistence uses? And they have already reduced commercial harvest in these areas to a high extent, and so there's some areas that have been shut down because of the lack of king salmon. Madam Chair.
Other board discussion. Mr. Jensen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If this proposal will be adopted, it may result in a minimal additional direct cost for the private person to participate in this fishery due to poor internet capability. Tier 2 applications must need to be mailed to the department. The department would incur additional costs to oversee and administer Tier 2 permit program because of issuing, collecting, and entering harvest information from the permits, and increase public education on outreach efforts to facilitate a permit program. The department at this time does not have funding for this type of endeavor. And I'll call the question, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Jensen. The question has been called. Errors and omissions. Director Abong.
No, Madam Chair.
Mr. Peterson.
No, Madam Chair.
Captain Frenzel.
No, Madam Chair.
Director Nelson, please call the roll.
Final action on Proposal 90. Zareh.
No.
Wood.
No.
Heimbach.
No.
Mitchell.
No.
Jensen.
No.
Carlson Van Dort.
No.
Carpenter.
No.
Motion fails, 0-7, Madam Chair.
Proposal number 91.
Ross Rennick with the department. Proposal 91, 5 AAC 01270, lawful gear and gear specifications in operation.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Staff comments, please.
Nick Smith with the department. This proposal would establish alternative fishing methods that could be used during times of chum, sockeye, or coho salmon conservation, which allow for a more adaptive management strategy. Further, this proposal would align methods used to conserve king salmon with all other Kuskokwim River salmon species. Currently, by emergency order during times of chum salmon conservation, subsistence fish wheels must have live boxes and be checked at least every 12 hours, with chum salmon being returned alive to the water. Chum salmon can also be required to be released in beach seine and hook and line attached to rod or pole. And gillnet mesh can be restricted to 7 1/2 inches or greater, or 4 inches or less, with gillnet length being specified by the commissioner. The department is neutral on the allocative aspects of this proposal. The department submitted and supports this proposal to modify Kuskokwim area regulations to provide subsistence fishing opportunity while conserving salmon to meet escapement goals. The Kuskokwim area currently has several management tools available for the protection of king salmon while still being able to provide harvest opportunity on more abundant salmon species that have overlapping run timing. The number of management tools available for chum salmon conservation is inadequate and non-existent for sockeye or coho salmon. Furthermore, current regulations are not aligned with specific gear operation for chum and king salmon when concurrent conservation measures are needed for both species. Madam Chair.
Thank you. Board discussion. Ms. Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that this is a reasonable proposal. I think in a time where we have, some of our resources are struggling in this area, that to giving the department the tools that they need to better manage for this and provide opportunity where they can, and also conserve where they can is an important thing to do. And I'll also notice that there was only public comments in support of this proposal.
Mr. Jensen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will be in support of this proposal. Also, I was just reviewing the on-time public comments, and Ms. Mitchell already dealt with that. I will refer to my subsistence regulation review to the comments I made on proposal number 90. And the adoption of this proposal may result in additional direct costs for a private person to participate in this fishery through the purchase of additional gear. Approval of this proposal is not expected to result in the additional direct cost to the department. Madam Chair.
Thank you. I'll be supporting this as well. I think I heard in public testimony that the provisions in the proposal are reasonable for users in this area, and anecdotally, it was relayed to us that there were many locals that were supportive of this regulation as well. So, any other board discussion? Mr. Carpenter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll support this proposal for similar reasons that previous board members have stated. I think the one thing we got to think about, considering this meeting specifically, is, trying to provide as much subsistence opportunity as we possibly can, in the light of some of these conservation issues that we're having. So I think giving the department tools to maximize that opportunity when it's warranted is appropriate.
Mr. Jensen.
I did call.
All right, the question has been called. Errors and omissions. Director Raybon?
No, Madam Chair.
Mr. Peterson?
No, Madam Chair.
Captain Frenzel?
No, Madam Chair.
Director Nelson, will you please call the roll?
Final action on proposal 90. 91. Heimbach.
Yes.
Jensen.
Yes.
Wood.
Yes.
Zaret.
Yes.
Carpenter.
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Carlson Van Dort.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0, Madam Chair.
Proposal number 92.
Ross Rennick with the department. Proposal 92, 5 AAC 01260, fishing seasons and periods, and 5 AAC 01275, waters closed to subsistence fishing.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Staff comments, please.
Nick Smith with the department. In District 4 and 5 of Kuskokwim Bay and in the Good News, Connectoc, and Aralic Rivers, this proposal would eliminate exact subsistence closed times during and surrounding a commercial fishing period. Subsistence closures would instead be established by emergency order. Currently, from June 1st through September 8th, in the Good News, Connectoc, and Aralic Rivers, and in District 4 and 5 of Kuskokwim Bay, salmon may not be taken 16 hours before, during, or 6 hours after each commercial salmon fishing period. The department submitted and supports this proposal since it would increase subsistence opportunities surrounding commercial fishing periods for subsistence users in Kuskokwim Bay and align regulations with those currently in place in Kuskokwim River Districts 1 and 2. Madam Chair.
Mr. Jensen?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I too will be in support, I'll be in support of this proposal. I like the alignment factor. That makes regulations simpler for the public to understand. And also providing increased opportunity for subsistence is a real plus. So I'll be voting in favor of this. I'll reference my comments on subsistence regulation review pertaining to the last proposal. Madam Chair.
Ms. Mitchell?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will also be in support of this proposal. There was only public comment in support of this. It aligns the regulations with the Districts 1 and 2. I will note that the Federal Subsistence Board did make a comment that it misaligns the federal regulation. However, they were still in support of it because it still benefits the fisheries managers and allows for additional subsistence use. And I think it speaks directly to the subsistence priority that we have to follow.
Mr. Zaret?
Yeah, I'll be in support of this proposal. This is similar to something we have in the Upper River and the Yukon. Unless there's a real reason to, limit the time prior to a commercial opening, the subsistence time, which there isn't in the Upper River, I don't see any reason to not support this proposal.
Thank you. Mr. Jensen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If this proposal were to be adopted, I don't believe it would result in any additional direct costs for the private person to participate nor the department to manage, and I'll call the question.
Thank you, Mr. Jensen. The question has been called. Errors and omissions. Director Raybon?
No, Madam Chair.
Mr. Peterson?
No, Madam Chair.
Captain Frenzel?
No, Madam Chair.
Director Nelson, please call the roll.
Final action on proposal 92. Carlson Van Dort.
Yes.
Carpenter.
Yes.
Jensen.
Yes.
Heimbach.
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Wood.
Yes.
Zaret.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0, Madam Chair.
Proposal number 93.
Ross Rennick with the department. Proposal 93, 5 AAC 01275, waters closed to subsistence fishing, and 5 AAC 71010, seasons and bag, possession, annual, and size limits for the Kuskokwim Good News area.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Staff comments, please.
Nick Smith with the department. Proposal 93 would close the Buckstock River to all fishing upstream of a point approximately 1.5 miles from its confluence with the Antioch River between June 14th and September 1st. Currently, the Buckstock River is open to sport and subsistence fishing year-round under background regulations and regulations that are specific to the Antioch River drainage upstream of Dostock Creek. The department opposes this proposal. The Buckstock River is used by Antioch residents for the harvest of many subsistence resources throughout summer. Closing all fishing will not prevent boating activity related to other subsistence harvesting activities or other recreational uses during the summer. Spawning fish, spawning reds, and potentially low water will still be present after September 1st. If the board were to adopt regulations limiting subsistence and sport fishing in the Buckstock River, the board should evaluate and consider whether changes outlined in this proposal should be applied to all Kuskokwim area salmon spawning tributaries across all life stages. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Board discussion. Mr. Carpenter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, generally speaking, I'm a very big proponent of protecting spawning habitat. I think some of the comments that we heard in public testimony were interesting. I think that some of the information that's specifically to the background of this proposal, including the jet boat-induced mortality study that was done in the 90s that didn't suggest that this was particularly having an impact. The other part of it is it seems like they're trying to rationalize the proposal using discharged volumes of water, which I'm not exactly sure how that is being measured. So I want to hear what other board members have to say before I make my final decision on how I'm going to vote on this, but I'll just leave it at that, I guess, for now.
Mr. Wood.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll be voting in opposition to this particular proposal, and I was persuaded immensely by PC 7, which was basically a comprehensive description of the practices followed by Antioch Lodge on the river to avoid causing damage. The proposal as written seems to be anticipatory in nature and was not given enough specifics of actual damage that occurred. And what really struck me, I guess the strongest, was the log that was provided showing the vessels that they encountered over, a 5-year period. And it ranged from 1 vessel a year to 4 vessels a year. That's not a lot of traffic, and I am not persuaded that we need to go a total closure route as is being advocated, so I'll be a no vote, Madam Chair.
Mr. Jensen.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I concur with Mr. Wood's assessment of I'll be voting in opposition. It's a very low traffic, and I don't see where any harm come from that little amount of traffic, so I'll be voting in opposition, Madam Chair.
Mr. Zare.
Yeah, I probably will not be voting for this proposal. I lived on a spawning creek for 11 years, and I'm well aware of the damage that can happen to eggs from high water and gravel movement and that sort of stuff. I've actually experimented with killing eggs, that I've fertilized and stuff. And anyway, I don't think that the usage on this river, I think it is a subject that needs to be kept in mind, but I don't think this is a good example of a river that needs to be protected from boat traffic.
Thanks. I think I agree with many of the comments of my fellow board members here. I know that there have been local concerns expressed about the traffic on the spawning beds. There's been testimony that there's no subsistence fishing on the Buckstock, and maybe some of that is because of the fact that they're locally identified as spawning grounds. However, in listening to some of the other testimony in committee of the whole, the traffic does seem to be minimal, and the practices of some of the operator that spoke to his operation in this area seem to be very sensitive and respectful to the conservation issue and the spawning grounds, and sensitive to the placement of the reds. So at this time, I want to be mindful of the fact that this is a local concern that was brought toward the board, but I don't see the evidence there to support full closure, so I won't be supportive of it either. Mr. Jensen?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'll refer to my subsistence comments on Proposal 90 to this one, and if this proposal were to be adopted, I don't think it would result in additional direct costs for the private person to participate nor the department to manage. I'll call the question.
Thank you, Mr. Jensen. The question has been called. Errors and omissions, Director Raybong?
No, Madam Chair.
Mr. Peterson?
No, Madam Chair.
Captain Frenzel?
No, Madam Chair.
Director Nelson, please call the roll.
Final action on Proposal 93. Zaret.
No.
Wood.
No.
Heimbach.
No.
Mitchell.
No.
Jensen.
No.
Carlson Van Dort.
No.
Carpenter.
No.
Motion fails, 0-7, Madam Chair.
Proposal number 94.
Good morning, Klaus Wittig, Department. Proposal 94, 5 AAC 71.010, season and bag and possession, annual and size limits for the Kuskokwim and Good News area. Madam Chair.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Staff comments, please.
This proposal would close sport fishing for chum salmon in the Connecticut River to non-residents from June 1 through July 15th. This was amended by the proponent to reflect June 1 through June 30. Current regulations allow for a bag and possession limit of 5 chum salmon with no size limit. This proposal would potentially reduce sport fishing opportunity and effort for chum salmon when a harvestable surplus is available. The Connecticut River flows 85 miles west from headwater lakes in the Auckland Mountains into Kuskokwim Bay and supports all 5 salmon species found in Alaska. Chum salmon run strength has varied throughout western Alaska and was weaker in 2021 and 2022. Chum salmon generally return to the Connecticut River from starting mid-June to mid-July, which overlaps with king salmon. There are aerial survey escapement goals for king salmon and sockeye salmon on the Connecticut River, but not for chum salmon. A small commercial fishery operated outside of the mouth of the Connecticut River in 2020 and 2021, the first since 2015. It did not operate in 2022 due to a lack of a fish processor. Neither subsistence fishing nor sport fishing on the Connecticut River have been restricted because of conservation concerns or poor run sizes since at least the year 2000. Most sport fishermen are non-residents who travel to the Kuskokwim River to target rainbow trout, king, and coho salmon, and chum are targets secondarily. Based on the most recent statewide harvest survey, that was 2016 through 2020, the estimated 5-year average harvest of chum salmon was 323, and the catch average was 10,801, which includes both guided and non-guided anglers. This level of chum salmon catch is likely reflective of the relative abundance when anglers are targeting other species. The department opposes this proposal. Conservation measures, when needed for chum salmon in the Connecticut River, can be addressed by emergency order authority. The harvest of chum salmon is relatively small, and no restrictions on the sport or subsistence fisheries has been required to maintain sustainability since at least the year 2000. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. For discussion, Mr. Wood.
I just want to confirm that what we're actually voting on is for the time period of June 1 through 30th, rather than through July 15th as was originally proposed.
Through the chair, correct. The proponent amended that to reflect June 1 through 30.
Thank you.
The proponent requested amendment. We have
That's
not.
what I'm concerned about.
Proponent requested amendment. What we have before us in the language is June 1 through July 15th.
That's what I wanted to confirm. Okay. Then, Madam Chair, I'd like to amend that period to be June 1 through 30th, rather than through July 15th.
Second, ask unanimous consent.
Any opposition? Hearing none, the proposal has been amended to apply to non-residents from June 1 through June 30. And we have the amended proposal before us for discussion. Mr. Carpenter, then Mr. Jensen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was looking through some of the background in this, in the department's comments, and it talks specifically to utilization, aerial surveys that are done for king salmon and sockeye escapement, but it didn't reference chum escapement. And then also in the department's comments, it says that if there was a chum conservation issue, that EO authority could be used, but how would you quantify in season a chum problem if you're not assessing it through aerial surveys? Is there some sort of weir or something else that's set up that you're using?
Through the chair, I'll defer to Nick Smith for that.
Nick Smith with the department. Historically, a weir operated on the Connecticut River about midway through the river system. Funding was lost at 2015 for the operation of that project, and that project encompassed all salmon species swimming up the Connecticut. Currently, we're relying on local fisher information, and then the last couple of years, the catch and effort from the commercial fishery to inform what the status is for chum and coho. Thank you.
Mr. Jensen.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I see there's a Department of Law comment on this one. If Mr. Peterson would give us his comment, please.
Certainly, through the chair, Member Jensen, I'm just pointing out that the board has the direct statutory authority to distinguish between residents and non-residents in sport fishing. And normally when it does so, it ties that regulation to a conservation concern. And it sounds like that's been articulated here. It's also occurred to me, though, while the board is discussing this, the way that this is written, it would close sport fishing for chum to non-residents. But it sounds like there's several salmon species in the creek at the same time. So that might raise an enforcement concern. I know, if I were prosecuting a case and somebody says, look, I was fishing for king and I accidentally hooked a chum, well, that wouldn't really be prosecutable. They're not fishing for that species. They might run into them. So that's something to consider. I mean, I think it could be difficult to enforce, I guess is the point.
Mr. Jensen.
Follow up, so if this person, if we were to pass this and not allow non-residents to fish there, and they caught a chum by accident while fishing rainbow trout or king salmon or otherwise, and he pulled it out of the water, according to the regulations, that's his, he has to keep it, so then you'd definitely be in violation of the law if it were to be passed, correct?
Well, through the chair, Member Jensen, you've touched on an issue of constitutional law that I could talk about at length, but I won't. There's a hunting case from some time ago that we can talk about off record where someone can't be compelled to keep something that would put them in violation of the law. But in any event, it would be difficult to enforce, I think, but this, as written, it would probably prevent people from targeting chum, which in Clearwater you can see. So if that's the case here, then, if a trooper were to see somebody targeting a school of chum, then that might be enforceable. So.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That helps with that explanation. I can't support this. I don't see a conservation issue with this stock of fish. And if I did, I would definitely support it to reduce the catch level. But at this time, I can't support it because of there's no need for conservation at this time. I'll reference my comments on Proposal 90 as to the subsistence regulation review, Madam Chair.
A couple questions. So, are we meeting escapement goals on this river? Is there an escapement goal for this river specifically for chum?
Nick Smith with the department. Madam Chair, there is not an escapement goal for chum on this river. The only established escapement goals are for Chinook and sockeye.
Thank you. And I think that one of the concerns I heard during committee of the whole testimony was that some of the assessment that had been done previously, perhaps in collaboration with the tribe, funding no longer exists for that, so that has gone away. So there really is no assessment of the strength of chum stocks on the Connecticut, right?
That's mostly correct, Madam Chair. So the weir that operated, it did not operate long enough to develop an escapement goal for any salmon species. So it was a short time period that the weir was operated on. And we still get an understanding of at least the general magnitude of the chum and coho runs from catch and effort data and then talking to local fishers out there, that subsistence. So it's not that I mean, we're definitely data limited, but it's not completely zero data available to assess the runs.
Thank you, and as noted, I think in your, that there has been commercial opportunity in the past couple of years, with the exception of last year, just because there wasn't a buyer, is that correct?
Madam Chair, that is correct. There was no commercial fishery on the Connect between 2016 and 2019, and then 2020 and 21, there was a commercial outfit buying fish in District 4.
So had there been a commercial operator, do you think you would have been able to provide some commercial opportunity in 2022?
Madam Chair, I think we would have been. Looking at the catch and effort data, sockeye salmon completely dominated catches. So for example, in 20 and 21, the harvest of chum salmon was approximately 5,000 fish for the entire fishing season. And in the past, the average commercial harvest was 27,000 fish, and that ranged anywhere from 14,000 to 100,000 chum salmon. Whereas sockeye salmon, in recent years, we've had tremendously abundant runs, kind of correlated with Bristol Bay, and they've dominated the catches, and that's really what everybody was going after, Madam Chair.
Okay. Well, I mean, obviously, the chum is something that we want to keep an eye on, and I recognize that it's difficult to assess if you don't have money to assess it. So I can kind of understand where this proposal kind of came from, but as it's written, I just don't see the conservation justification to restrict a fishery that's relatively low impact, I think, and so I'm struggling to support this as it's written. Mr. Heimbach.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the focus on conservation, but I also see another side of this that I think is equally important as we unfold here in Western Alaska. I'm a big-time champion of local self-determination about how the resources in their immediate area are going to be used. And while I appreciate also the talk about enforcement complexities, I'd like to congratulate the village of Quinnahock, because I think they were very canny about knowing probably that the taking incidentally of chums while they were fishing for something else raises some interesting questions. So I think they actually went about it real well. I probably won't support the proposal the way it's written, but there are other aspects of it that I think they're very interesting for the future.
Any other board discussion? Mr. Jensen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If this proposal were to be adopted, I don't think it would result in any additional direct costs for the private person to participate, nor the department to manage, and I'll call the question.
Thank you, Mr. Jensen. The question has been called. Errors and omissions. Director Taube.
No, Madam Chair.
Mr. Peterson.
No, Madam Chair.
Captain Frenzel.
No, Madam Chair.
Director Nelson, please call the roll.
Final action on Proposal 94 as amended. Mitchell.
No.
Jensen.
No.
Wood.
No.
Carpenter.
No.
Carlson Van Dort.
No.
Zare.
Yes.
Heimbach.
Yes.
Motion fails. 2 in favor, 5 against, Madam Chair.
Proposal number 95.
Ross Rennick with the department. Proposal 95, 5 AAC 07365, Kuskokwim River Salmon Management Plan.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Staff comments, please.
Nick Smith with the department. When the projected escapement of Kuskokwim River king salmon is within the drainage-wide escapement goal range, the department would not provide set gillnet fishing periods prior to June 12th in the Kuskokwim River when a federal special action or emergency special action is in effect. Mr. Peterson?
So, Madam Chair, the issues raised in this proposal and the subsequent proposal are currently subject of litigation in federal court. The proposer is a party to that litigation, and I just wanted to bring that to the board's attention. I have a few more comments on it, but I'll reserve until I'm asked.
Thank you. Board discussion? Mr. Peterson, I'll ask you for your further comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So my understanding of this proposal is that it seeks the board to tell the department to disregard the board's plan and allow a separate entity to manage this fishery if that separate entity decides to take management action. So it's really a delegation of the board's authority to a separate entity or government or individual. And it's not at all clear to me that there's any authority to do so. There is, of course, delegation authority to the commissioner in AS 1605-270, but I'm not aware of any authority for the board to essentially outsource its regulatory authority to a separate entity.
Mr. Peterson, by separate, you mean outside of the state of Alaska, other than the state of Alaska?
Yes, exactly, other than the delegation authority granted by statute in 1605-270.
Thank you. Board discussion, Mr. Carpenter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a problem with this proposal for a multitude of reasons, but I think some of the clear definite intent that Mr. Peterson just talked about reinforces my problems even more, so I will not be supporting this.
Other board discussion, Mr. Wood.
I can't envision a situation where I would be agreeable to saying, whatever the feds decide, we will bind ourselves to blindly. And this applies both to this proposal as well as Proposal 96, which follows. And it bothers me a bit, though it's not controlling in my decision, that a party to litigation on this very issue is the one that's bringing it forward in the advocacy position at this level. I'll definitely be a very strong no.
Thank you. I guess I will add that, you know, I don't think it's appropriate for the board to disavow its regulatory authority over the management of state water fisheries. And so I can't be supportive of this either, and would also echo some of the comments from Mr. Wood. Ms. Mitchell and then Mr. Jensen.
Thank you. I'll echo the comments made by my fellow board members. I don't think we should be divesting our authority to manage state water fisheries to anyone else at this time.
Mr. Jensen.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I concur with my fellow board members, and I will be voting in opposition to this. I'm not about to give up the Board of Fish authority to give it away. We got this back at statehood, and we've managed our fisheries fairly well, so I don't think it's time to delegate them to somebody else to manage. And I'll also reference my subsistence regulation review comments to proposal number 90. If the proposal would be adopted, I don't believe it would result in any additional direct cost to the private person to participate, nor the department to manage, and I'll call the question.
Thank you, Mr. Jensen. The question has been called. Errors and omissions. Director Raybong.
No, Madam Chair.
Mr. Peterson.
No, Madam Chair.
Captain Frenzel.
No, Madam Chair.
Director Nelson, please call the roll.
Final action on Proposal 95. Jensen.
No.
Heimbach.
No.
Carlson Van Dort.
No.
Zaray.
No.
Wood.
No.
Carpenter.
No.
Mitchell.
No.
Motion fails, 0-7, Madam Chair.
Proposal number 96.
Ross Rennick with the department. Proposal 96, 5 AAC 07365, Kuskokwim River Salmon Management Plan.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Staff comments, please.
Nick Smith with the department. If adopted, when the projected escapement of Kuskokwim River king salmon is within the drainage-wide escapement goal range, the department would not provide directed subsistence king salmon fishing periods in the Kuskokwim River after June 11th, when a federal special action or emergency special action is in effect. Madam Chair.
Thank you. And Mr. Peterson, with respect to the legal issues, I think you referenced this proposal as well. Are your comments maintained from the last one?
They are, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I will also reference my comments from proposal number 95. Any other board discussion?
Question?
Thank you. Question has been called. Errors and omissions, Director Raybung.
No, Madam Chair.
Mr. Peterson.
No, Madam Chair.
Captain Frenzel.
No, Madam Chair.
Director Nelson, please call the roll.
Final action on proposal 96. Heimbach.
No.
Jensen.
No.
No.
Wood. Zaret.
No.
Carpenter.
No.
Mitchell.
No.
Carlson Van Dort.
No.
Motion fails, 0-7, Madam Chair.
Proposal number 97.
Proposal 97, 5 AAC 07365, Kuskokwim River Salmon Management Plan, and 5 AAC 01270, Lawful Gear and Gear Specifications and Operation.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Staff comments, please.
Nick Smith with the department. In the Kuskokwim River, during times when the commissioner determines that it is necessary for the conservation of salmon, the department may, by emergency order, close the commercial gillnet fishing season and immediately reopen a fishing season during which dip net or beach seine gear may be used, and all salmon specified by the commissioner caught in a dip net or beach seine gear must be returned immediately alive to the water. Additionally, if this proposal was adopted, it would modify Kuskokwim area commercial and subsistence dip net gear operations to include a single rigid handle with a single line attached. Currently, gillnet is the only gear type available to harvest salmon in the Kuskokwim River commercial fishing districts. Under the current definition, dip nets must have a single rigid handle and be operated by hand. The department submitted and supports this proposal as a means of providing a clear definition of dip net operations and providing more commercial fishing opportunity for surplus salmon while conserving less abundant salmon in the Kuskokwim River. Madam Chair.
Board discussion. Mr. Jensen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be voting in support of this. This is definitely, gives opportunity when there is definitely restrictions on the drift gillnet and set gillnet. It'll still give people an opportunity to fish and release the fish that they don't want to keep or catch or can't catch. So I'll be supporting this. Is sort of a housekeeping to me. I'll refer to my comments on subsistence on proposal 90, and I'll do a cost analysis. Approval of this proposal may result in additional direct costs for the private person to participate in this fishery to purchase a dip net or beach seine. It's not expected to result in additional direct costs for the department. Madam Chair.
Mr. Carpenter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple things I'd like to clarify in regards to the way this proposal is written. Under the definition that you're using for dip net, in the lower Yukon, there are a couple of exceptions in regulation in regards to the shape. Is there a reason why that wasn't included here and it was there? Or is the reason that it's included in the Yukon regulations is because someone had come before the board and asked for that after this was currently in regulation?
Nick Smith of the department. I am unaware of how the lower Yukon definitions became on the record. For the Kuskokwim, our dip net definition originally came from the statewide definitions under 39-105. And so I have been using those as our definition of dip net, and that's why I added that with the inclusion of adding a rope for clarity to alleviate the issues that we're seeing on the Yukon and the Kuskokwim. Thank you.
Follow up, and one more question in regards to, you've specified in here that a beach seine cannot be constructed out of monofilament gear. Is that kind of a standard thing in regards to places around the state where beach seines are used? Is that in clear definition?
I'd have to defer to Mr. Raybung on the statewide definition for beach seine, but the beach seine definition in there is what we currently have in the books for the Kuskokwim. Thank you.
Sam, do you have any clarifying comments?
Stand by.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 5A AC 39.105. Let me get the whole citation in here. D6, a beach seine is a floating net designed to surround fish which is set from and hauled to the beach. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Do you have any follow-up, Mr. Carpenter?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I was just curious why you put that in there, specific to monofilament. I mean, I'm not necessarily suggesting it's a bad idea. I was just curious why you put it in there.
So, I don't know, the way I would see it is that you're trying to minimize the incidental harvest of other species in the non-targeted sockeye that's abundant. Is that correct?
That is correct, Madam Chair. And also the language for beach seines is consistent on the Yukon now, too. Thank you.
So, I'm concerned about this, frankly, because, I mean, while I get the desire, boy, do I get the desire to be able to provide opportunity on surplus sockeye when you have other stocks of conservation concern. It's an issue that we deal with in other parts of the state. But, and the methods that you're proposing, the beach seine and also the dip net, I think are, and not having monofilament, I think are conducive to that. But, you know, I've seen, you know, it boils down to the fisher about whether or not they're going to be respectful of that intention or not. And I've seen where folks aren't so much. And when you're dealing with stocks of concern in this particular environment, given the testimony that we heard, I'm really struggling with that for consistency, whereas in terms of how I approach these issues. Yeah, I mean, if you've got other stocks of concern that are in, you know, perilous state in some, then I don't know if we should be fishing on them in any shape or form. That's what I'm wrestling with. Other board discussion, Ms. Mitchell, and then Mr. Jensen.
Just a question for staff. Is primarily the commercial fleet that's standing to be affected by this proposal local residents and subsistence users of the area?
Through the chair, this is Nick with the department. So we've not had a commercial buyer in the Kuskokwim since 2015. So since the 2016 and onward season, there's been one registered catcher seller operating in the Kuskokwim River. Because it's only one person, all of their stuff is confidential. But it's really one person as of late. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Jensen? Oh,
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't believe we have any stocks of concerns on the Kuskokwim. Correct me if I'm wrong. I heard you mention that just now. So.
well, if that's the case, then I appreciate the clarity. Thank you. Mr. Jensen?
Yeah, thank you. I think the idea of not allowing monofilament gear is to keep it more direct to the definition of beach seine, which is using seine web. You can technically take a drift gill net and take one in from one beach and go around to the other, but then you're going to be killing and killing fish that you don't want to keep. So I think that's part of the thought behind that process, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Zray?
Yeah, I've opposed big beach seines in other areas before, and I've also operated whitefish seines nets before, and so I'm familiar with trying to get a restricted species out of it alive and without harm, and I'll be opposing this proposal.
So maybe not a stock of concern, but conservation concern is perhaps the words I should have used. Mr. Jensen?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I can't remember if I did cost or not, but if this proposal were to be adopted, I don't believe it. It may require a little extra cost for the private person to buy a dip net or a beach seine, and it won't result in the additional direct cost of department to manage, and I'll call the question.
Thank you, Mr. Jensen. The question has been called. Arizona Missions Director Raybung.
No, Madam Chair.
Mr. Peterson.
No, Madam Chair.
Captain Frenzel.
No, Madam Chair.
Director Nelson, please call the roll.
Final action on Proposal 97. Carlson Van Dort.
No.
Carpenter.
Yes.
Jensen.
Yes.
Heimbach.
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Wood.
Yes.
Ray. Sorry.
I said no.
Madam Chair, the motion carries 6 in favor, 1 against. My apologies. That was a Zaray no. 5-2. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. Must be the last one or something. All right, that concludes deliberations on Group 5. We're going to take a short break while we pull together the miscellaneous business agenda, and we'll be back on the record in about 30 minutes or so. business portion of our agenda. The miscellaneous business agenda has been RC'd as RC number 58. And there are 5 things on this agenda, the first of which being the committee recommendation on joint board meeting. I would direct members' attention to RC 22 that provides the joint board committee of fisheries and game report, and I will turn it over to Director Nelson to sort of summarize and perhaps provide some recommendation to the board.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you mentioned, RC 22 has a packet of information with a cover page summarizing everything. The joint committee between the Board of Game and Board of Fisheries met on December 20th to discuss the possible scope and timeframe for a joint Board of Fisheries, full joint Board of Fisheries and Board of Game meeting. The recommendations out of the committee was yes, to proceed with a planning for a joint Board of Fisheries and Board of Game meeting that would include chapters 96, 97, which deal with the AC system and regulatory process for both boards, as well as chapter 99, which deals with subsistence uses and non-subsistence areas. By the way, there's a small typo in the second paragraph on the front page where it says chapter 96 again, but that should be 99 on the third line of the second paragraph. And then the committee also discussed a possible possible dates for the meeting, the joint board meeting of March 25 through 29, 2024. It would be a 5-day meeting since it would include non-subsistence areas most likely. And that's all in there. You'll see following the cover page, there's a draft of the call for proposals. One of the items that the joint committee discussed was since non-subsistence areas are going to be in the scope of the call for proposals, that they felt that people bringing forward changes to non-subsistence areas should be encouraged to address the criteria for non-subsistence areas rather than just submitting a proposal to say, change this non-subsistence area. There was a little discussion about whether or not there should be maybe a review process to cull out proposals that don't address those criteria in their proposal, but I think the sense was to shape the scope to encourage that in the proposals, but not necessarily chuck proposals out if they don't speak to the criteria. However, there is still the option for a vetting process to be implemented by the boards if they want to when the proposals come in. Following that, there is a summary of the meeting held on December 20th, as well as the memo that was prepared for the joint committee meeting at the end of the packet. With that, turn it over to Member Mitchell. She's chair of the Board of Game, Board of Fisheries side of the joint committee, if she's got anything more on the joint committee meeting.
Member Mitchell.
Thank you for that, Director Nelson. The Board of Game is going to be meeting later this week to set their 2024 meeting schedule. And part of the reason when we held our joint board meeting that we didn't specify the exact dates was because their meeting schedule hasn't been determined yet. Because they're going to be meeting later this week, my thought was just to kind of defer the setting of the finalizing of the dates to them when they meet. And during the joint board meeting, we did agree upon kind of the end of March being the time frame, specifically March 25th through the 29th. And so when the Board of Game meets, they'll take that into consideration that, you know, we intend for them to pick dates in the last 2 weeks of March and kind of give them the opportunity to specify those exact dates once they know when their regulatory meeting's going to meet. So, but I'll open it up if there was any other board members that wanted to provide input for that.
Yeah, I will just say that I did participate in the joint committee meeting, and the only recommendation that I really underscored was not doing it right after a lengthy, I think it's an Upper Cook Inlet meeting. So I requested a minimum of 10 days to 2 weeks in between those meetings, which is why 25th through the 29th was tentatively, was recommended. So I just kind of wanted to put that on the record because we've done that, and I don't think anybody's interested in doing that again. Mr. Nelson.
Member Mitchell already kind of covered it. My recommendation to the board was going to be to wait and let the Board of Game call the joint board meeting after they've established their schedule for March of 2024. One of the reasons is that if it can be scheduled close to the end of their meeting, there could be some savings on travel costs by not having Board of Game members travel all the way home and then come back for another meeting. And so we can't really pick dates that would allow for that since they haven't set their schedule yet. So, I mean, I think the board, if board members agree, we could relay to them that we're ready to go, and we think that the recommended dates out of the committee of March 25 through 29 are appropriate, and leave it at that.
Any other board discussion? Okay. Moving on to agenda item number 2, enforcement funding. RC 52 addresses this agenda item, and I will turn it over to Member Mitchell to speak to the letter she drafted.
Thank you, Madam Chair. During the November 2022 Board of Fisheries meeting, we heard overwhelming public testimony about the lack of enforcement and the need for additional enforcement in that region. The board acknowledges that this is not isolated to the Bristol Bay region, but in fact all over the state and for both fish and game resources. So I have went ahead and drafted a letter requesting additional funding to support our enforcement agency. As well, during the Bristol Bay meeting, the Board of Fisheries also passed a proposal that would require attentional retention reporting for king salmon by commercial fishermen and harvest reporting for king salmon for sport fishermen. In this region, the Nushagak River king salmon is a stock management concern. The board felt that it would be important to have additional data and information collected at a minimum for this species, but within our authority, we don't have the ability to fund the department to go ahead and make this happen. So included in this letter is a request for funding to provide the department what they need to be able to follow through on the proposal that was passed at the meeting. So we had a conversation about having the legislative committee take this up, but the legislative committee has not convened. It is a little bit time sensitive in the sense that the legislative body will be meeting, or is meeting, I believe, right now. And so I went ahead and drafted this letter for board consideration at this meeting.
Mr. Wood.
So, Chairman, Member Mitchell, you want what, the board to approve this letter to be sent? Is that what you're seeking?
That's correct.
Then I would so move to forward this to the appropriate bodies.
Second, and ask for unanimous consent.
Right, hearing no objection. I might make a few little stylistic edits, but nothing substantive to the letter. And we'll go ahead and complete this and forward it along. I believe it's going to be headed to the Office of the Governor, Commissioner Vincent Lang, and House and Senate leadership. And sort of to dovetail off of this, I think Member Mitchell brings up some really important issues in this letter related to funding and research funding, and I know Member Wood has talked about this repeatedly as well. And so we were also talking about how we might collaborate a little bit more formally with the department in terms of identifying and prioritizing what those research needs are and what the board would like to see. And I think that we're kicking around the idea of doing that through the committee process, through the research committee. And I think that there will be some more coming on that front, but it relates to this letter, but it doesn't, just kind of letting people know that we recognize the need for additional research. We'd like to work collaboratively with the department in terms of how to identify those priorities, and then go through that process. All right. Agenda item number 3, clarification of intent on proposal 65 with substitute language found in RC 48. And Director Tobby, would you like to speak to this?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So yesterday, the board adopted RC 48 for Proposal 65, and it's the regulation that requires a king salmon reservoir must be retained. And the first part of that has in all waters, and so we were looking for clarification of the intent of the board. Within the Tana River drainage, there's currently 12 lakes that are stocked with king salmon, and the king salmon that we're stocking are catchable size, 8 to 12 inches. These are landlocked lakes. They're for a winter ice fishery primarily, and a lot of youth participate in that fishery. And so we were wondering if, with the intent, to exclude those lakes from that regulation. So, for example, it could say in all waters except stock waters listed in 5 AC 74010 C29, which is our list of stocked lakes under our chapter for the Tana area.
Right, thank you for that clarification. So I offered that substitute language. It would not be my intent with that substitute language to include stocked lakes for that. We also passed similar substitute language for the Yukon River drainage, and I don't believe there's any stocked king salmon in that area, correct? Or in lakes in that area?
That is correct, Madam Chair. In the Yukon area, most of it's fairly remote, so it's just too cost prohibitive to stock lakes in that area. So if the board is on board with this intent, then we can work with law and our regulation specialist to add that into the substitute language.
Okay, so yeah, just to be perfectly clear, it was not my intention to capture stocked lakes, and I don't know if the board has any additional comments. Ms. Mitchell?
I'd also say maybe winter fisheries also, just 'cause that doesn't sound like fun. Didn't you say it was a winter fishery for kings at one of those stocked lakes?
Actually, kings tend to be more aggressive with colder water, and so they do tend to be in ice fisheries where they take. I think they do take a few in the open water period, but the majority of them are harvested in the wintertime during the March, February, when it gets warmer, more people are out.
Okay, I agree with Member Carlson Van Dorth's comments.
Any other board discussion? Is the intent clear for you?
Yes, it is. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Agenda item number 4, emergency petitions. We have 2 before us. One that was brought forth in RC 29, and we'll take up that one first. Mr. Bowers.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So the joint board petition policy is found in 5 AAC 96625, and the pertinent part of that is in paragraph F. And that reads, an emergency for purposes of 5 AAC 96625F is an unforeseen, unexpected event that either threatens a fish or game resource or an unforeseen, unexpected resource situation where a biologically allowable resource harvest would be precluded by delayed regulatory action, and such delay would be significantly burdensome to the petitioners because the resource would be unavailable in the future. And the policy also states that emergencies are rarely found to exist. So I'll start with RC 29. This petition seeks to allow registered Dungeness crab catcher vessels to also act as tenders for Dungeness crab and this would apply to areas that have in the fisheries that are, well, he states all non-limited entry Dungeness crab fisheries. There aren't any limited entry Dungeness crab fisheries in registration area J. So I'm just putting that on the record for you. So this would, I interpret this to mean that this practice would be, he's petitioning to allow this practice in all of registration area J. It's currently allowable in the Kodiak Dungeness crab fishery only. The petition in RC 29 doesn't cite a specific resource situation. So you know, I'm not sure what's unforeseen, what the unforeseen event is. The regulations are longstanding and are well-known, and the current regulations haven't prevented the fleet from being able to utilize the available harvestable surplus. So that's our assessment at this time. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Jensen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to accept the petition found on RC 29.
Second.
Thank you. Board discussion. Mr. Wood.
Question for us, I understand we're gonna compress timeline, but did the commissioner make any formal findings whether emergency exists or does not exist?
Through the chair, Mr. Wood, because these two petitions were received within 30 days of a scheduled Board of Fisheries meeting, the board's delegation to the commissioner to make a finding does not apply. That's why you're hearing them now.
No, I understand that fully, but I was wondering whether he had done so regardless of the delegation or not. In other words, what's his conclusion? It seems like what you were saying is you, our staff, do not see an emergency here.
Through the chair, Mr. Wood, the commissioner did not make a finding.
Okay.
And if you're asking me that question, I can provide you my assessment.
Please do.
I do not believe the petition in RC 29 represents an emergency as described in 5EC 96625F.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Jensen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I concur with the department's assessment. I can't see where this would meet any of the criteria to bring it forward as a emergency petition, Madam Chair.
Any other board discussion? Hearing none.
Question?
Yeah, the question has been called. Director Nelson, please call the roll.
On the motion to accept the petition found in RC 29. Wood.
No.
Carlson Van Dort.
No.
Zaret.
No.
Mitchell.
No.
Heimbach.
No.
Carpenter.
No.
Jensen.
No.
Motion fails 0-7, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. That brings us to the emergency petition found in RC 49.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So RC 49 addresses a situation in the Kodiak area tanner crab fishery, seeking to allow vessels that are registered as catcher vessels in that fishery to also act as tenders in that fishery. And as I mentioned earlier, that practice is allowed in the Kodiak Dungeness crab fishery. RC 49 mentions a situation related to the price being offered for tanner crab for the 2023 fishing season, that it's significantly lower than the price paid in 2022 and cites that as an unforeseen or unexpected event. Tanner crab prices and crab prices in general fluctuate wildly from one year to the next, and it's not uncommon for the price to be unknown leading up to the fishing season and be announced, very close to the start of the fishing season. There's a lot of factors that affect crab prices because Alaska crab competes on a global market. Speaking to the resource situation, whether there is a biologically allowable resource harvest that would be precluded by delayed regulatory action. Again, the regulations that are in place now have been long-standing. They're well-known. The season begins for tanner crab begins January 15th and it continues to March 31st. And that season length has always been sufficient to allow the available harvestable surplus to be taken, as has the regulations related to tendering of crab. I would note that there are a number of vessels that are registered to tender tanner crab in the various Tanner crab fisheries in Area J this winter. And it's my understanding that there is at least one tender vessel registered that is planning to tender crab from Kodiak to Dutch Harbor, which is the situation that RC 49 is trying to address. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowers. Mr. Jensen, somebody would like to make a motion?
Move to accept the petition found in RC 49.
Second.
Mr. Wood?
Forrest, same questions I asked you on 29.
Through the chair, Mr. Wood, the commissioner did not make a finding, and it's the department's assessment that RC 49 does not represent an emergency as defined in 5AAC 96625F.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and I agree with the comments made by staff as to the prices fluctuating wildly. I mean, history shows that. But, and that might be the underlying basis, no question of it. But apparently, what they call a strike, and I guess I deal in labor law enough that I wouldn't call it a strike, it's just they don't want to go fish, they don't go fish. But nonetheless, that seems to be what's pushing this RC forward. And I don't think it's something that this board has any business getting in the middle of. So I'll be a no vote, Madam Chair.
Mr. Jensen and then Mr. Carpenter.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I concur with Mr. Wood. I can't find an emergency no matter how hard I try. The $8 price last year was an anomaly. It probably won't be seen for quite a while again. A lot of processors took a bath on that one. So I can't make it work in my mind, so I'm not going to be able to support this petition, Madam Chair.
Mr. Carpenter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to put on the record that I concur wholeheartedly with the department's assessment on this. I think that trying to find an emergency in this particular instance specifically, it's really in regards to economic decisions that individuals that hold CFEC permits in the Kodiak Tanner Fat fishery have to make themselves. And I'd also like to state that I think that if there is opportunity in the future for something like this to happen, that they can come through the board process in the next cycle to address this, and I think that's probably the appropriate time.
Any other board discussion?
Question.
Question has been called. Director Nelson, will you please call the roll?
On the motion to accept the petition found in RC 49, Carpenter.
No.
Zare.
No.
Heimbach.
No.
Carlson Van Dort.
No.
Jensen.
No.
Mitchell.
No.
Wood.
No.
Motion fails 0-7, Madam Chair.
That brings us to agenda item number 5, board comments. And I believe, Mr. Wood, you had some.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I request this item be put on miscellaneous. The subject I wanted to speak to the board on is subsistence. I've been through a lot of meetings now with this board, and we do have on occasion isolated instances where we're dealing with a subsistence issue, but nothing near the degree what we saw at this meeting. And I would like to get a report back, but I'd like to preface my remarks by saying I'm not privy to the internal department discussions leading up to the budget and our management decisions that are made. And there may be very good reasons not to do what I'm going to ask them to report back on. And that is to let's return back to a division of subsistence that will be its own division to deal with the subsistence issue and put it on parity with the commercial division and the sports division so that they can independently come to this board with recommendations regarding that issue. It's been said time and time again that they have a statutory priority. No one can dispute that. And they're the only ones of the group that have such a priority. And yet they're the only ones of the group, well, other than PU, that don't have their own division with the ability to govern that such a division allows. So I would like the department, and I'm not directing because the board doesn't have that authority. This is simply a request that the department come back to us as to the pros and cons of having a division of subsistence and if there's reasons that it shouldn't occur, I'd like to hear that as well. After all, subsistence is probably the only one of all of the harvesters that are doing so not only as a food source, but as a cultural driver. I mean, we heard beaucoup testimony of that. So that is my request to the department to respond after consultations, et cetera, as to what it would take to do it, and should we do it, and if so, and if not, why not?
Mr. Raybon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director Taube's looking it up now, but it's actually a section in statute. It would have to be a statutory change to make it a division.
I understand that, but
Okay.
would the department be favorably inclined to that, or?
I can't speak to that.
No, exactly. That's why I'm asking you to come back with a report.
Thank you. I agree with a lot of the comments that Member Wood just made. You know, we're facing subsistence issues, and I only anticipate them, they're going to grow and spread throughout the state of Alaska. As we move forward, I have concerns that we're not feeding our rivers and therefore not feeding our people enough. So I would appreciate some analysis of that and recommendations, at least from the department, if possible. And thank you for bringing the subject to the fore, Mr. Wood.
I'm sorry, say again?
I said just thank you for bringing the subject to the fore. Any other board comments? Ms. Mitchell?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Member Wood, for bringing that forward. I too agree that all user groups in the state of Alaska should be equally represented at the board process level.
Mr. Zaray?
I'd like to say the same thing in support of what Mr. Wood was saying, and subsistence, I'd take it one step further and say that I think that subsistence being, having priority over other uses, for that reason, I would like to see subsistence actually, as commercial manages now, you know, as the main management group, it seems, I think it should be subsistence, because subsistence is a priority. I don't know how appropriate what I'm just saying is, but this has always been a thought of mine.
Thank you. Along those lines, I also just wanted to take a minute to express my thanks to the University of Alaska Fairbanks and the Dena'ina Chiefs Council for the class that they've brought to attend and participate in this meeting. It was really meaningful, really helpful, and incredibly important to have local voices here at our meetings, so you could engage with us, you can talk with us, and you can better educate us on the issues at your local level. So I just wanted to extend the thanks to the board and also my personal thanks to those two organizations for helping to make that happen. Any other board comments? Mr. Raybon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know I'm not a board member, but I wanted to take this opportunity to recognize Mr. Jim Menard. This will be his last meeting as a area management biologist for the Department of Fish and Game. I understand he's retiring pretty soon. He's been with the department for over 33 years and has served in a variety of capacities. But I just wanted to thank him for his service and recognize that he will be missed. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Raybung, and also huge thanks to all of the AYK department staff. It's been a pleasure working with you at this meeting. I appreciate all the hard work that you do, and that goes for all the folks around this table as well. Right, anything else? Ms. Mitchell?
I just don't want to leave out the public component of this. We really appreciate everyone who came here to speak on behalf of the public at this meeting.
All right. Not seeing any more comments around this board. We'll go ahead and adjourn the AYK meeting. The time is 11:02. Thank you very much.